Coming up on today's Airborne, Cernan calls a boy who established a White House petition for NASA. Standardized Propellers gets the go-ahead for Red Bull racers. And the FAA revises its advisory circular on English proficiency. Welcome to Airborne on Aero-TV. I'm Ashley Hale. When astronaut Cernan heard about a petition established on the White House We the People website by a 6-year-old boy who hopes to increase funding for NASA, he just had to pick up the phone. It's reported that Connor Johnson got the call last Wednesday. Cernan said by the way of introduction, quote, "I am an astronaut. This is Cernan calling. I'm the last person to have walked on the moon," end quote. Cernan said Connor reminds him of himself when he was a small child. He encouraged the boy not to give up on his vision. Cernan said, quote, "There's things you have to do to go to the moon. You've got to dream about things that a lot of other people think you can't do," end quote. Connor said that the petition has seen some activity since his story first appeared on a Denver television station. The petition needs 100,000 electronic signatures by December 29th to get the attention of the White House. The launch of the 2014 Red Bull World Championship has seen a lot of modifications to the rules and regulations. Along with the standardized racing engines comes a similar amendment for the propellers. In previous years, each team could choose its own propeller, but for the 2014 season, each plane will be fitted with the hard-sell 3-bladed 7690 structural composite propeller. The propeller, nicknamed the Claw by Red Bull Air Race pilot Michael Goulian, is noted for its low gyroscopic forces and inertia, and its incredible thrust. By the end of the last Red Bull Air Race season, all the competing teams had converted to the Claw. The decision to use the standardized propeller was taken in order to improve the safety of the aircraft in case of engine failure. The new propellers will be fitted with counterweights, which will determine how the blade's position if oil pressure is lost during flight. With these counterweights, the blades remain in line with the airflow, therefore reducing drag in a glide. With the same model engine and propeller in each plane, the biggest variable in the race will now be pilot skill. The FAA has revised its advisory circular, providing guidance for airman applicants, training organizations, designated examiners, and aviation safety inspectors, and determining English language skills currently required for airman certification. The new advisory circular reiterates that there are distinct regulatory English language eligibility requirements in FAR Part 61 for pilots in flight and good instructors, Part 63 for flight engineers and flight navigators, and Part 65 for air traffic control tower operators, air traffic dispatchers, mechanics, repairmen, and parachute riggers. Eligibility requirements contained in Part 61 require pilots, flight instructors, and ground instructors to be able to read, write, speak, and understand the English language. Training foreign nationals for FAA-issued certification is big business for the U.S. aviation training industry. This revised advisory circular is a reminder that it's important that all applicants for FAA airman certificates meet the English language eligibility requirements regardless of their nation of origin. 2 members of the U.S. Army's Golden Knights parachute team have been awarded Soldier's Medals for life-saving actions during a jump over Homestead, Florida on February 15th. It was reported that 2 jumpers, Sergeant David Echeverry and Staff Sergeant Christopher Clark, became entangled at about 4,000 feet during a training jump while attempting a new and untried maneuver. Echeverry was being choked by a parachute cord, and as he lost his consciousness, he pulled a release cord on his harness, hoping to allow Clark to land safely. He knew he would not survive. When he regained consciousness, he found Clark was holding on to him using all the strength he had. Clark said of the incident, quote, "I had him and I wasn't letting go," end quote. The staff sergeant reportedly collapsed from exhaustion when the 2 landed. For their acts, each saving the other, The pair was awarded the Soldier's Medal in a ceremony at Fort Bragg on December 11th. It's the highest Army award for valor outside combat. Beechcraft says it's in the final stages of negotiations with a buyer for its Hawker 4000 and Premier business jet assets. And officials say they are hopeful a deal can be closed by the end of the year. It's reported that Beechcraft CEO Bill Boyster said that attorneys for the two parties are reviewing the legal documents to reach an agreement on the last few key points. The sale would include Beechcraft's Plant No. 3 facility in Wichita, which the unnamed buyer reportedly plans to use for composite component manufacturing rather than full airplane assembly. Boyster said he doesn't think that building airplanes is in the buyer's long-range plans. The assets are being sold as part of Beechcraft's restructuring under Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Hawker Beechcraft emerged from bankruptcy in February, as did the Beechcraft Corporation, with its business focus on piston, turboprop, and military airplanes, along with aftermarket support. During a December 12th webinar presentation with industry stakeholders regarding the agency's controversial new proposal of obstructive sleep apnea screening, also known as OSA screening, Federal Air Surgeon Dr. Frederick Tilton appeared determined to push ahead with the requirements. Tilton's insistence on moving ahead with the plan was clear, despite the concern expressed by industry stakeholders, including the U.S. Congress. Tilton said, quote, "If Congress passes a law forcing industry consultation, we'll be compliant with it. Until they do so, we will move forward with this," end quote. AOPA reports that Tilton said requiring testing for sleep apnea is a process change, and it does not require the normal rulemaking procedures, so it would not be followed, and the policy would go into effect in January. The FAA's OSA screening mandate, first announced by Tilton last month, would require pilots with a body mass index of 40 or greater to undergo screening for the condition, which could cost thousands of dollars. Aviation stakeholders such as AOPA, EAA, and NBAA strongly oppose this precipitous and unilateral action taken by the FAA. A bipartisan bill introduced by the House Aviation Subcommittee is aimed at compelling the FAA to follow established rulemaking processes. ANN's editor-in-chief Jim Campbell notes this is, quote, "just one more reason that the aviation world has come to learn that the FAA seems no longer interested in serving the aviation community, but is serving its own interest instead," end quote. And of course, ANN will update you as more information becomes available. You're watching Airborne, more in a moment.
Redbird Skyport is a multifaceted aviation laboratory charged with developing innovative solutions to the issues facing the industry.
It started out as a vision for a laboratory where we could objectively measure the systems and the processes that we were developing. Being able to put some objective measures behind the anecdotal evidence that we have about the value of motion and the application of this technology is very, very important, because until we can objectively measure it and play that data back, we can't design training systems that make the best use of it.
For more information about Redbird flight simulations, as well as Redbird's new Skyport, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com or www.redbirdskyport.com.
Over the past 2 decades, no resource has compiled as much expert-valued information about the sport plane world than the Sport Plane Resource Guide. Over 1,500 pages, hundreds of aircraft, dozens of how-tos and directories. All this and more will be coming to the sport aviation world soon with the new, all-electronic and updatable Sport Plane Resource Guide for your iPad, iPhone, Kindle, tablet, PC, or other electronic devices. Get your order in now. www.sportplane.com.
Welcome back. If you'd like to suggest a story for Airborne, Aero-TV, our website, or our podcast, drop us an email to news-spy@aero-news.net. The Collings Foundation has acquired one of the last flyable examples of the P-40B Warhawk from a museum in England and plans to bring the airplane back to the U.S. Collings Foundation Executive Director Robert Collings said, quote, "It was obvious that we needed to get the airplane back to America," end quote. Collings said the purchase was made possible by a donor who wishes to remain anonymous. The purchaser will donate the airplane to the Collings Foundation, which will bring the nonprofit organization's collection to an even dozen airplanes. This P-40 was deployed at Pearl Harbor in 1941, but managed to escape damage during the attack. It was later lost when it impacted a mountain on the island of Oahu and remained there until being recovered in the 80s. It returned to flying status in 2003 and was acquired by the museum. The Collings Foundation said that the aircraft is in process of being shipped back to the U.S., where they hope to have the rare and iconic aircraft on display and flying in honor of our World War II veterans for years to come. Talks that had initially been described as informal between Boeing and the IAM union, Local 751, were apparently pretty serious, but the two sides were still unable to come to an agreement that would have kept Boeing's 777X work in the Pacific Northwest. Tom Patton explains.
Talks between the Boeing Company and Machinists Union District 751 ended after the two sides failed to reach an agreement on a proposed contract extension that would have guaranteed the 777X would be built in Washington state. The Machinists representative said the union's members want to build the 777X, and they believe Boeing's best chance for success for the new airplane is for it to be built in the Pacific Northwest. But District 751 President Tom Wroblewski said the price Boeing demanded was too high, and the senior leadership team could not recommend Boeing's counteroffer to the rank and file. He said Boeing's last and best offer on Thursday was mostly unchanged from the proposal that Machinists had rejected by a 2-to-1 margin last month. Boeing said in a statement that the revised 8-year contract extension would have built on the company's previous offer with substantial economic improvements. The company would have committed to placing final assembly of the 777X as well as the fabrication and assembly of the airplane's composite wing at a Boeing location in the Puget Sound area. A separate agreement committing final assembly of the 737 MAX at the Renton, Washington site would have been extended through 2024. Boeing said the site selection process has continued while the talks were underway. The plane maker says it's received proposals from 22 states. For Airborne, I'm Tom Patton.
And now it's time for Aero Video of the Week. Today's AVW shows how you too can have your own aircraft carrier. This is a classic case of having fun through innovation and trial and error. Search Jumbo RC Carrier launches model on YouTube. The Government Accountability Office, also known as the GAO, handed a setback to Blue Origin, a commercial spaceflight company backed by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, which had filed a protest over the disposition of Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. NASA had listed the facility as surplus and hopes to lease it to a private company. The issue appears to be how NASA is allowed to lease the launch complex. Is it to be leased by a single company for exclusive use, or can the complex be leased to multiple users? The SpaceX company is applying for an exclusive lease. Blue Origin prefers a multi-user approach. Blue Origin maintains that the agency intends to misapply the terms of the announcement for proposals in evaluating submitted proposals and selecting a prospective lessee for the facility. Their protest was denied. The decision is viewed as being a positive sign for SpaceX. In light of the GAO's decision, NASA said that it is, quote, looking forward to the near future to selecting an industry partner for negotiations to lease and operate LC-39A, end quote. Well, that's our program. Remember, you can get comprehensive, real-time, 24/7 coverage of the latest aviation and aerospace stories anytime at Aero-News.net. Please remember, Airborne is streamed twice weekly and is always online. Join us again every Tuesday and Friday for a new edition of Airborne. I'm Ashley Hale. Thanks for watching.